What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host here, Haize, one of the hosts, holding it down for C-Dub and Bobby on today's Chicago Bears Central daily episode. I'm going to get back into the daily content, so we're jumping in that today. Today, we're going to be talking about KeyShawn Johnson's comments on the Chicago Bears season, calling 2022 a throwaway year. We'll also talk about Bears that need to have a big training camp to kind of solidify their roster spots. And then lastly, we'll talk about holes still left on the Chicago Bears team that they need to either fill during or before training camp. We'll get into all that and more on today's Chicago Bears Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
All right, Bears fans. So first up, we got to start with talking with this KeyShawn Johnson thing. And while, I'm not going to go as hard on this KeyShawn Johnson clip as I have some of the other critiques that have come from ESPN pundits, because when it boils down to it, yes, that's their job to break things and tear things down. But I honestly think that the KeyShawn Johnson comments are a little bit more fair. Now, I do disagree with him, saying that it's a throwaway year. I disagree with that terminology because this is a building year. This may be one of the most important years for the Chicago Bears because they're setting in a lot of the things that they do going forward. But to call it a throwaway year just because the roster isn't necessarily on paper the best roster, I mean, not just say on paper, let's be fair, it's not the best roster by any stretch of the imagination. To call it a throwaway year, I can't get with. To me, it's more than a throwaway year because this is where you're sending the base, right? This is where you're laying your foundation to go off of next year. Now, we're going to go ahead and play some of the clip. I'm going to do that now, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
And I think Jalen Hurts saw the opportunity and took it, where Justin Fields has no players around him. I mean, I don't want to dismiss any of those guys, but they don't have the type of players on the roster as a whole that they can compete at the larger level. 2023 is the year, right? I mean, the Chicago Bears, they lost their best receiver in Allen Robinson, who's in L.A. with the Rams now. Mm-hmm. So when you start Khalil Mack's in L.A. with the Chargers, when you start looking at the roster, the Jets roster is way better with a coaching staff in their second year. So you would naturally think that the Jets would win more games and be more competitive than the Chicago Bears. Look, it doesn't matter what they got on the defensive side, special teams. They don't have anything. Right. So if they win 4 games, that's a plus. Jeff said 7. I'm like, nah, man, they're not going to win one more game.
I was kind of surprised
when
he said 7.
They're not going to win 7. They're a 4-win team, and there's nothing wrong with that in a rebuilding year.
All right. So that was some of KeyShawn Johnson's comments there. Kind of chopped it up a little bit. But, one of the things that he says that he doesn't have anything there, that's the part that I disagree with. We have in Cole Kmet one of the best yardage per receptions of any tight end in the NFL from last year. Yeah, he didn't get touchdowns. Well, hopefully that will be fixed with Matt Nagy. We also have Montgomery, who is one of the best running backs in the league, I think, right? Not necessarily the top 5, top 10, but he is one of the better running backs in the league. And then also having Khalil Herbert to back that up. And then Darnell Mooney. While I understand that some people question, can Darnell Mooney be a number 1 wide receiver, a true number 1 on a big-time contending team, Darnell Mooney has shown that he's a damn good wide receiver in this league. So to say that there's nothing there, that he has nothing around him, I can't agree and I can't get with personally. Like, yes, there are a lot of question marks on this team, right? There are a lot of things that we need to see solidified in the course of this season and kind of get a better picture of so that we know and the front office knows how to build the team going forward. But I disagree with some of this in what he said. Now, I will say, like I said earlier, this is one of the more fair critiques. Yes, this team, especially getting rid of a bunch of veterans, letting them go, moving on from them. The clear number 1 wide receiver last year going away. And, a lot of this was focused on the offensive side of the ball. But that offense, the bones of that offense is still very much in. Now, we know we have a lot of questions on that offensive line, and I get that, and how that can change, make things easier or harder for the running game and things like that. But to say that this is a throwaway year, to say that there's nothing around Justin Fields, I can't agree with. There are some very good and damn good pieces around Justin Fields here, and some pieces that we think and hope are going to show a little bit more next season that we need to see. So that's where I sit on it. Let me know where you guys sit about KeyShawn Johnson's comments down below in there. Do you agree? Do you think this is going to be a throwaway year? Do you look at it more like me? This is a foundational year. Now, with that being said, throwaway year can be taken in a bunch of different contexts. And I just don't see it in any context, because even with that being said, we need to see poise. We need to see all those things that he mentioned from Justin Fields this season. So I can't just say, hey, no matter what happens this season, it's a throwaway year. It doesn't matter. I can't say that, but let me know down below what you guys think on KeyShawn Johnson's comments, and what do you think overall about the year. Now, one of the things that KeyShawn Johnson said is that 2023 is the year for the Bears. I don't say that. That's the year that you take and you build upon what you do. Yes, they have a ton of cap space. Yes, they're going to have a good draft pick, hopefully. Those type of things, yeah, but let me know what you guys think down below. Now, the next topic in today's episode of Chicago Bears Central Daily is players that we need to see more from in training camp, right? That we want to see either lock in their positions, lock in them being in the starting lineup. And really, I only have 3 on this list, right? I have Tevin Jenkins, right? There's so much around Tevin Jenkins. At some point he was looked at as like he was going to be the it at left tackle, right? Now, through this offseason, being moved to right tackle, then being moved from the starting lineup to the second lineup, and things like that. What happens with this is a big question on it. But when you look at like Dakota Dozier going away, things like that, it's going to be a lot of questions there. Now, he was a right tackle in college, so where he ends up fitting out on that is going to be determined. But I think Jenkins is going to be the starting right tackle, and considering where he was drafted before, what he was looked at to be at one point in time, I think this is going to be a big training camp for Tevin Jenkins to answer a lot of those questions surrounding the Bears' offensive line and surrounding him as a player as well. The next one, now this is a rookie, right? There's a lot of questions around rookies in general, but the first offensive player drafted by this new front office in this regime is Velus Jones Jr. And because of that, being 25 years old, coming in, I've compared him a lot to Knox and players like that. I want to see Velus Jones solidify himself in being that clear wide receiver that needs to be in the rotation. Some people will say that that's already there. Can he push for being the number 2 wide receiver over Byron Pringle? I don't know if that's going to be capable, but I want to see Velus Jones Jr. continue to develop. I want to see him put pressure on everyone and take notice of what he does and how well he's going to play, and I want to see him perform. I want to see him eliminate a lot of the criticisms thrown towards him as far as from Bears fans and outside of that of Bears going with him overtaking a wide receiver higher up in the draft. But being the first offensive player drafted under this regime, being a in that position of need, and a position that has probably the most question marks in it, outside of Darnell Mooney, but really how this wide receiver core is going to come together. We already talked about the wide receiver core being ranked by Pro Football Focus, as everything is one of the worst in the NFL. I think a lot of those questions can go towards being answered if Velus Jones Jr. has a big season this year and shows that he's a part of this rotation going forward. I think he can do that in training camp, and that's something I'm looking for from training camp from him as well. Next up, Khyiris Tonga. Now, Khyiris Tonga is in a position now where he's going to come in. He's going to be looked to do something at that defensive tackle position. But as the interior defensive lineman, he has a chance to really carve out a name for himself. Yes, he's not the strongest, not the most athletic or anything like that, but he is a big body that can get things done. 24 tackles in 15 games last season, right? We need to see bigger than that. We need to see him take that starting role and not lose it, right? He's going to have some competition from Mike Pennell in that. We need to see him stave that off, hold on to the job, and show that he deserves to be that starting defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears. But that's my list. Let me know down below, what are some things that you want to see coming out of training camp, going into training camp, during training camp, some of the question marks that you want to see answered, if possible, by these players heading into the preseason. Let's get into the last topic that we have for today. And this one, it's I don't want to say it's a lob, right? But it is one that we need to talk. And this is still holes that need to be filled during training camp for the Chicago Bears. Now, we talked about players that could step up, but we need to talk about that right guard position. We talked about right tackle with Jenkins. We need to talk about that right guard position. The fact that Dakota Dozier is now going to be out and he's been placed on injury reserve, he's probably not going to play. Who steps up in this? Who's the front runner to take that right guard position? We're looking at Sam Mustipher, of course, there, but also like Zachary Thomas, J. Tyree Carter, things like that. What goes on? Who comes out of training camp into preseason as that starting right guard? Do the Bears possibly go after something to fill that hole? I think they're going to do everything internally here in the roster, but that's one of the questions that I hope that is answered, and one of the holes that I hope is filled definitively during this training camp before we head into the start of the actual season. Now, the next one. This one is a more difficult situation to kind of pin in. But who's going to be starting or get those strong side linebacker minutes? Now, we know that the Chicago Bears are not going to use probably a lot of formations that require 3 linebackers. And with that, when there's not 3 linebackers out there, we clearly know who the 2 are going to be out there. But who's going to fill that 3rd linebacker position when it comes time to do it? And Chicago Bears signed Matthew Adams in free agency. He played mostly in special teams so far in his NFL career, but being 25 years old, being somebody who is unproven, right? And so with that being said, what happens with that? Now, again, that could very well be covered up by not using a lot of 3 linebacker situations for the Chicago Bears. But when they do, who's going to be that 3rd linebacker? Is it going to be Matthew Adams? And is he going to be able to step in and do that role effectively? That's the biggest question for me there. Those are some of the things that I hope to see kind of fixed, answered, worked on during this training camp, and us to come out of that, get it going into preseason, having those questions a little bit more answered. But let me know down below, what do you guys think? What are some of the positions that you think that you want to see, or holes on this team you want to see firmly locked in by the start of preseason, and some rotations, whether you want to go depth chart or positions as a whole? Let me know that down below. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in to Chicago Bears Central Daily. I'm the host here, Haize. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. Make sure you follow my co-hosts as well, both C-Dub and Bobby over there at the Cognac Boys. They also do the Shy Bulls podcast with the Cognac Boys, so they cover the Bulls like I do as well. So make sure you're supporting them over there as well. But other than that, make sure you're following the show at Shy Bears Central. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and or voicemail, the number to do so is 773-270-2799. Thank you for tuning in. Bear down, people. We're getting closer and closer to football. I can't wait, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.